Hi there and welcome to Central Texas Gardener. I'm Tom Spencer. In drought, it's tough times for the gardener, but it's especially hard on the wildlife. Since they're the most significant contribution to our gardens, today Meredith O'Reilly shares her tips on easy things to do to lend a helping hand. On tour, let's visit Howard Cheek for some photographic techniques to capture wildlife in action.
In 2009, the Nature Conservancy awarded Howard Cheek the grand prize in the 2008 Nature Photo Contest for a shot waterhole landing.
Really what it boils down to is the time and patience you have, and the number of shots you have to click off to get that one shot. Like I have a series of action shots of birds, small birds in flight, and there are hundreds of shots like the one that won in the Conservancy. A couple of weeks of shooting every day for a couple of hours every morning, with the light at the brightest, and hundreds and hundreds of missed shots, but you just keep trying.
Howard finds his models among the wildlife that share 6 acres in Kempner with him and wife Mary. In their certified backyard habitat, Howard hunts every day, though now he's got a different focus.
I used to hunt, I have a shotgun, and I'd always, from a kid, even in California, I'd like to hunt. I was raised that way out there, and it just seemed a natural thing to do. But through the photography, I developed appreciation for the animals through observing them over long periods of time, and a connection. And now I can't hunt anymore. I shoot with the glass.
He's come a long way since he picked up his first digital point and shoot in 2003 and joined online nature photo groups to learn from experts. Now he's launched a new career. Howard's biggest learning curve was picking up wildlife behavior to be ready to catch them in action.
When a bird's going to jump off the branch, you have to watch it. If you want to get it in flight, just jumping off, you have to watch it and observe what it does right before it moves, those little subtle things.
At home, he protects and embellishes his natural setting. Since food and water are natural draws, especially in drought, he provides the craft services that direct the talent to his camera. He built a ladder to provide squirrel food for shots out the bedroom window.
That's the main problem with any wildlife or nature photographer, is getting close enough. That's why we use telephoto lenses, and we never can get quite. So that's why out in front, where I built the pond, I planted the trees, the fruit trees and stuff, right near my window, and have the luxury of shooting right from my house. So I bring them to me.
Howard provides nesting spots, too. When the new family arrives, he camps patiently in a chair. He's learned how to stage a shot, including a group of trees beyond the front window for a soft, natural background. Howard plants in containers, too, since they're easy props to move. He always has an eye to the background.
I've gone as far as out here shooting the hummingbirds to put artificial backgrounds in at times. I'll buy a poster board of a pale blue, or even a light, whatever, a white card sometimes, way off in the back. One time I used a kiddie pool turn on its side for the blue, put it way off to the back, behind where the bird's coming to the hot lips there, feeding the hummingbird. I set the pool back there by the shed, and it created a light blue background. Anything that is a light color is good for the photographer, because it'll help increase the shutter speed. Or I shoot toward the sky, like that swallowtail in flight, that I call graceful flyer. I grew the zinnia real tall, and it was in a barrel, so it was already elevated. And I got low and shot so that when the butterfly would come off the flower, I had sky for background. Anytime you shoot it to the sky, you can shoot fast, which I had to you know, to get enough depth of field and speed to catch it moving that fast. You've seen a swallowtail jump off a flower, they move pretty, and you have to use manual focus. Just get as much depth of field. I think that was F16, you know, and manual focus to the flower, because you can't my camera, as fast as it can focus, can't focus fast enough to catch it moving now. So I just manually focus to the flower and catch it in a plane of focus off the flower, you know, the same plane of focus, so it's in focus. That's how that works. That's my technique for the butterflies in flight.
Having the right lenses, from a macro for close-in portraits and a telephoto for the camera shy, is nice, but attention to lighting is the key to success with even a point and shoot.
Well, morning's always the best. The morning hours, I always try to shoot in the morning. Afternoon, but never usually during the midday. The light's flat and from directly above. There's no dimension to the subject, you know. So you want afternoon, it's warmer, or morning, before 10:30 is when I shoot. And that's what we do. You know, we paint with light.
On the computer, Howard spends more time on research than photo enhancement.
You have to go online and search. That's how you learn. You shoot a new bird, you have to find out about it, find out what it's called before you can put it on your website or post it anywhere. You have to give it a name. The way I've looked at it is, if I can just produce God's work, you know, and faithfully, so that it can be appreciated, you know, by people anywhere, even if, you know, it doesn't matter how many. I've done what I'm supposed to do as a photographer, you know. I can never please everybody. A lot of my work is you know, but you're it's what goes inside, what goes on inside the individual over time, you know. Like I told you, the things that makes you an observer, but it makes you feel more connected, basically. When the bottom line, at the end of the day, just feel more connected with nature by doing it.
Thanks, Howard, for sharing your garden with us. And coming up next, we're going to be talking about how to help out wildlife through hot and dry times. We're all suffering from the drought, but the wildlife is suffering in particular. And joining me to help out with this topic right now is Meredith O'Reilly. Meredith, thank you so much for being a guest on the program.
Glad to be here.
You have your own blog. It's called greatstems.org. Tell us just real briefly about the blog.
Oh, goodness. Well, my Great Stems blog, and it's actually .com.
Okay.
It's started out as a garden blog, and, you know, I just love wildlife so much. It's sort of become more of my adventures with wildlife, just as much as my adventures with plants.
Filled with beautiful images.
I try. They're not as beautiful as some, but I enjoy it.
That's great. That's great. And this is an important topic. Lots of us garden with wildlife, but there's a particular class of gardeners out there who garden for wildlife. They're called wildlife stewards. What does that exactly entail?
Habitat stewards are volunteers with the National Wildlife Federation, and we actually go through a training program that teaches us more about the native plants in our area, and then we go out to the community and we work with homeowners, we work with businesses, different organizations to help create habitat there at their locations, help restore habitat, educate the community, help build schoolyard habitats, and so forth.
All right. Well, speaking of the hot times that we're dealing with now, obviously the most important thing that we can offer to wildlife is water.
Is water. Mm-hmm.
Right. And this is the essential. And it's almost magical, the effect having a source of water has in the garden, because the amount of wildlife increases exponentially.
It really does. And if you have, you know, larger sources of water like ponds, then it's really tremendous how much wildlife gets attracted to your garden. But you don't have to have a large pond. You don't have to have a small pond. You can work with bird baths and other sources as well.
Right. Well, bird baths are easy for most gardeners, but maybe too large for some. And there are alternatives, and just simple trays, ceramic trays that will hold the water, will attract quite a few critters to the garden.
Absolutely. I have lots of these ceramic saucers in my garden, and what's nice about them is that you can put them down low on the ground for toads and frogs. You can raise them up onto a stump or a pedestal or a table to keep the birds off the ground, to keep them safe.
Right.
They are super easy to clean, and you can use them for other purposes.
Right, and that's
well.
what nice thing to think about on the cleaning side is having the slick surface of a ceramic, for example. And we will talk about hygiene and bird baths and watering things as well. And for those who are wondering later, we will be talking about the fruit. There's a specific purpose for that as well. But you can put these out on your patio, and you'll be surprised by the amount of wildlife that will come to those. So really great. Now, you also talk about puddling areas. And for those who aren't familiar with that phrase, what does that mean?
It's referring to what butterflies do when they go down to the ground or to sand or surface, rock surfaces and so forth, to get minerals, salts, nutrients. It's usually the male butterflies that do this, and its purpose is for reproduction. It helps those nutrients get transferred to the female, and then they have more successful reproduction. So puddling is referring to how all those butterflies will go down, not just to the damp soil, but they'll actually go down to dog feces. They'll go down to dead animals. I mean, it's kind of gross where they will sometimes get their nutrients. But puddling in the home garden, you can use a saucer like this to keep some damp soil in so that the butterflies can get those nutrients.
Okay, so you can put this down into the garden, put a little bit of soil in it, and actually keep it kind of muddy.
Exactly. You can mix in some compost or some sand or a little salt, and they may go down to it. They may go right to a different area of your garden. You really don't know, but it's just another way that you can attract butterflies.
All right. And in terms of food sources, there are a lot of different things to consider. You reference the fact that the habitat stewards learn about the native plants, and that's obviously where you should start, right?
Native plants are absolutely the best food sources for our native wildlife. For butterflies, where they lay their eggs, they need very specific plants. They're caterpillar host plants, and it has to do with the chemistry between that caterpillar and that plant, something that's evolved over many, many thousands of years. Those caterpillars need very specific plants, and they are our native plants.
Well, they provide the foliage to be eaten for caterpillars, but they also provide flowers, they provide fruit, they provide so many other things as well.
Fruits, berries, and seeds.
Right, seeds, exactly. These are all things that the wildlife absolutely depends on. And there's nothing better for attracting some of our most colorful birds, I think, than berries on plants. My favorite native plant, just about my favorite. It's hard to choose, but possum haw holly.
Oh, so many berries on there.
Great berry plant, and cedar waxwings and the mockingbirds. It's just a wonderful thing to have in the garden, and it attracts a lot of vibrancy, I think, to the garden space.
And of course, summertime isn't the time to be planting these plants. You want to plan ahead for fall.
Right.
So summertime, you can actually be thinking about what you do want to plant, and then you will plant the plants that will either blossom next summer or provide the seeds or provide shade.
Right.
But you want to do all that kind of planting in the fall.
One tip that you like to give has to do with, when it comes to the plants, is leaving seed heads on the plants for a longer period of time. And I have found that, for example, like with echinacea, my tendency is to go in there and clean up the garden. But on a lot of plants, like echinacea or a lot of other kinds of coneflower type things, if you leave some of those seeds behind, you'll see the birds out there working those plants.
Absolutely. Purple coneflower is one of my favorites because the birds will just go down and land there and pull those seeds out. And sunflowers, you see it a lot with the sunflowers. So the bees go crazy when the flower's in bloom, but as soon as it starts to not look quite so pretty, it attracts in those finches. I know you love lesser goldfinches. They love the sunflowers and the cardinals and so forth. So don't be so quick to tidy up.
Right. Well, supplemental feeding is always something that people want to do, and there are some do's and don'ts. Let's start with the do on the feeding mixes that you like. This is what I'm holding here, has a mix of striped sunflower, black oiled sunflower, peanuts. I see safflower and some Niger thistle in there as well. This is your preferred mix, right?
It really is. Most of our songbirds are going to be drawn to these seeds, and then that cracked corn is also
yeah,
in there.
There's a little crackhorn in here as well.
And you'll have blue jays and woodpeckers come to that. They'll look for those peanuts. The chickadees love the peanuts, and almost all of them will like that black oil sunflower. And you don't have to get the seeds that have the holes if you want to reduce the amount of hole mess that may result.
Right, yeah.
But
it's always part of the equation.
I add it to my compost, and it works out just fine.
It's easy to deal with. Okay, on the don't list, it's this millet seed.
Millet, and I think that's milo in there, and and you can see how very little sunflower they actually added to that mix. So this is a cheaper mix that you might find in a grocery store, but the birds that are more attracted to this are the English house sparrows and the white-winged doves and the starlings. They like to eat that seed directly without having the holes on it.
Right.
So if you're having a problem with English house sparrows, well, anybody who has even one English house sparrow is having a problem.
Right.
They are pest birds, and we really want to discourage them. So removing that seed from your mix is your best bet.
And I said we would talk about the fruit in this, and putting fruit out is great for the butterflies, correct?
It's great for the butterflies. It's great for mockingbirds. Any birds that love the fruit. You may find some mammals visiting as well. But the butterflies will love the oranges. They love bananas. They love rotten bananas, not fresh bananas. They like the really gross ones.
Okay.
And but putting out a little fresh fruit salad for your wildlife, it can bring a lot in.
And then real briefly on hummingbird feeders, we don't have time to talk about much here, but we have a preferred hummingbird feeder. And why is something like this one a preferred feeder?
Well, both this one, and if you can see this one also, they have all red on them.
Right.
And they're very, very easy to clean. Can I open this up?
Yeah.
So
just open it up.
When you have a hummingbird feeder, you want to make sure that it's super easy to clean, and you can see that you can get to all surfaces in here. And then same with that one. When you open it up,
and it's very easy to get to.
It's very, very easy to open.
And I'll kind of show this to our audience. We don't have that much time left, but you know, one of the hardest areas to clean are the little ports where they actually sip. But there are brushes available, I'm sure, at wildlife stores.
Absolutely.
And they're specially made just for this purpose, which is really great.
I definitely recommend that. And then I use a brush that you would use for a baby bottle. I use that to clean the inside with some vinegar.
So good hygiene is really important on these things. You don't want you attract the birds, you don't want to make them ill. So real briefly again, I want to give people a chance to connect with you. The website is greatstems.com.
Yes.
And it's a blog, and again, from what our producer says, some gorgeous wildlife images for everybody to check out and see.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Meredith O'Reilly, for being our guest today, and we hope that you've learned a few things out there that will help our feathered and other friends through the drought. Coming up next, it's our friend Daphne.
Hello and welcome to Down to Earth. I'm Daphne Richards. Our question this week is one from one of our viewers, Linda, who wants to replant her raised beds that her cats have been using as a litter box. She's concerned about contamination and wondering if she needs to use any bleach or lime to clean that area. Since this is a contained area, I would suggest going ahead and removing all of the current soil and replacing it with a mixture of purchased topsoil and compost. Depending on the size of the bed, you might be able to purchase topsoil and compost by the bag or by the truckload at a local nursery. But you may also have to have a larger amount delivered from a topsoil company. But there is no need to go to any special cleaning measures with bleach or lime. Simply remove as much of the contaminated soil as you can. The contamination generally won't be a problem, even if you're planting vegetables, because all animal diseases don't move through the roots into the plant. But if you're planting leafy vegetables or you have edible parts that might be touching the soil surface, that could be a problem if those contaminants get onto the surface of something that you're going to eat. But then only if the cats continue to use the area as a litter box, because you will have removed the contaminated soil. Our plant this week is desert willow, Chelopsis linearis. This is a gorgeous flowering tree. It gets its common name from its long, linear leaves and billowy resemblance to actual willow trees. It can range from 15 to 40 feet tall, so it's a rather small tree. It's similar to most other desert trees in that it can have a very shrubby growth habit, so you can actually leave it for a shrub if you like. Has a very open growth habit and canopy, which gives it a very structural element in your landscape. The flowers are trumpet-shaped and very large. The species desert willow has a nice soft pink flower with streaks of yellow in the throat. Hummingbirds just love these trumpet-shaped blooms. Desert willow is deciduous, so it will be bare in the winter. It generally flowers in mid to late summer after some summer rains and we've had some heat. It's not a relative of actual willows, but is in the same family as trumpet vine and catalpa trees. It needs full sun, but it's not as picky about its soil. It's extremely drought and heat tolerant and can virtually be ignored once it's established. But in an extreme drought, just a little bit of water would keep this tree very happy. I think that plant breeders must have had Austin in mind when they named two of the cultivars of this tree that they developed. We've got Bubba with dark pink flowers for our Shiner box set, and Lucretia Hamilton with deep fuchsia flowers for our Chardonnay set. Chalopsis and catalpa trees were crossed at one point, leading to the Chitalpa. That species likes a lot more water and has trouble in the heat of our area. The species desert willow makes tons of seed pods, so one great attractive quality of the Bubba cultivar is that it does not generally make seed pods, so you don't have that mess. You might choose that one instead. To do in your garden this week, if you haven't already, keep an eye out for those insects whose populations tend to explode when the weather gets incredibly hot and is dry, such as chinch bugs and spider mites. We'd love to hear from you. Please visit klru.org/ctg to send us your question or a plant of the week from your garden.
Thank you, Daphne. Now let's check in with Trisha Shirey for Backyard Basics.
Ladybugs are one of my favorite insects, and their life cycle is very interesting to watch in your garden. Now, you don't have to buy ladybugs. If you have your garden maintained organically and you're not using a lot of pesticides, you should have plenty of ladybugs in your garden. But it is important to have some aphids, their favorite food source. Ladybug will mate and lay their eggs on the underside of leaves where there's a good food supply for the larvae. So leave a few plants in your garden, maybe some lettuce, some bok choy, some greens that are stressed from the spring heat, and those plants will become your host plants for ladybugs. Now the eggs are laid in clusters on the underside of leaves, so you want to check and examine leaves before you take them into the kitchen. Also, often I found them on the underside of mint leaves or lettuce leaves as I'm harvesting things to take inside. So if I see those yellow jelly bean-like eggs on the underside of the leaves, I make sure and leave those in the garden. They lay their eggs on the underside of the leaves to protect the eggs from predators. Sometimes the eggs will not be fertile. Some of the eggs will not be fertile, and that allows the newly hatched ladybug larvae to eat the unfertilized eggs and have an instant food source. But they'll start crawling all over the plants and devouring insects. Again, aphids are their favorite, but they'll also eat mites and mealybugs and scale and many other insects in the garden. And the larvae are very hungry and eating constantly. So they have to shed their skin several times during the larval stage. And the larvae look like little crocodiles. They're black and orange. They start out small, and then they'll split and shed their skin, and so you'll see little black skins on the underside of leaves, and then they'll finally become a pupa. So that larva will attach itself to the underside of a leaf again and will pupate and stay in the pupal stage for several more days and then hatch out as an adult lady beetle. And the adults will be a lighter color when they first hatch, and the shell will harden. They're very susceptible to predators at that time, so they usually stay hidden. But the shell hardens and darkens, and then they develop the spots, and they become the adult lady beetles that we all know. It's a good idea also to leave some plants in your garden to bloom, because the adult ladybugs like nectar flowers. So I like to leave some parsley, some cilantro, dill. All of the members of the Umbelliferae family are great nectar sources for the ladybugs. And give them a little bit of a sprinkle in the mornings if the weather is dry, because they appreciate some moisture on the foliage of your plants. But you don't have to purchase ladybugs. If you have the right sources in your garden for the adults to have the nectar and a good food source of aphids for the larvae. There is a weed that grows quite commonly in the spring called the sow thistle, and it's usually filled with aphids, and so I sometimes leave a few of those in the garden. You can pull the flowers off if you're worried about it going to seed, but that becomes a great food source for ladybugs. So as long as you have the right ingredients in your garden, you'll have lots of these wonderful creatures, and they're just really fun to watch in the garden.
Visit klru.org/CTG to watch online, get more tips, and to visit our blog. Next week, meet some wicked plants. Until then, I'll see you in the garden.
To learn about today's program, watch online, and follow CTG's blog, check out klru.org/CTG.